Significa, no te voy a decir que no significa nada, creo.
I'm not gonna say that it doesn't mean anything. And they're a really good team, but we also know that we're a really good team as well. So beating them feels good, but we know that we're capable of doing it.
That was Astros star and MVP candidate Yordan Alvarez after his team swept the New York Yankees right out of the gate. The Stros have not lost since the All-Star break ended, winners of 5 in a row. Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again into the Fox 26 Sports Stream. I'm Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. Glad you can join us. We do this every Monday night just after 7 o'clock. You can find us on a variety of our social media and online outlets. Go to our Facebook page, go to our YouTube channel, just search Fox 26 Houston in YouTube. You'll find our channel. You can go to our Twitter page and, of course, fox26houston.com. We're going to talk a lot of Astros right now, who, as I mentioned, have won 5 in a row, not only swept that doubleheader against the New York Yankees right out of the All-Star break, but then a big weekend sweep in Seattle against a Mariners team that had won 14 in a row before the Astros took 3 in a row from Seattle. And then we'll even talk a little bit Texans as training camp begins the end of this week. Friday morning is the first official practice. Rookies and quarterbacks reported to NRG Stadium yesterday. We should point out, as everybody in the football world is doing, we want to send all our best wishes, thoughts, and prayers to Texans rookie receiver John Mechie III. He unfortunately announced yesterday he's been diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia and is unlikely to play this upcoming season as he focuses on his health. He did say he's in good spirits. He's getting top-notch treatment and care, and obviously few places you'd rather be than in the city of Houston if you have to deal with something like this. Mechie says it's the most treatable form of leukemia out there, and so, of course, everybody's sending their best to the rookie out of Alabama as he deals with something much bigger than football. As for baseball, I mentioned the Astros coming out of the break have not lost a step, look every bit the part of a World Series contender. They will be in action later tonight. They're still on the West Coast. They open up a series with the Oakland Athletics in just about an hour and 20 minutes, first pitch out there at the Coliseum or whatever they're calling it these days. Not like Arlington is one of those parks where they're always changing the name every few years, but should be no problem for the Stros as they take on the lowly Athletics, and then back at Minute Maid this weekend for another series with the Mariners, who, as I mentioned, entered the All-Star break as the hottest team in baseball, had won 14 in a row. I was at Dodger Stadium with our sports director, Mark Berman, and that was one of the hot topics among everybody who was out there, was what to make of the Mariners and how well they had been playing over not just the course of their 14-game win streak, but really the last month or so. But as you see, it didn't mean much of anything in the standings. They made up hardly any ground on the Astros, and then this weekend with the chance to possibly make some kind of statement, the Mariners fell well short of that as the Astros thoroughly dominated them from the get-go, taking 3 in a row. And as has been the case pretty much all season long, the division is all but wrapped up. I mean, it would take something absolutely astronomical for the Astros not to run away with this thing as they already are. As you see, only 2 teams in the AL West even above 500, and the Stros with a very, very, very healthy 13-game lead over the Mariners. So the more important thing, if you're an Astros fan at this point, is that race for the number 1 overall seed and home field advantage throughout the series. The Stros right there on the heels of the Yankees, thanks in part to taking that doubleheader a few days ago right out of the All-Star break. And this is actually the closest any team in the American League has been to the Yankees in the AL standings since early to mid-May. That's how far ahead the Pinstripes had been until Houston has just been quietly chugging along, playing stellar baseball. And again, they're doing it without their full complement of guys. Lance McCullers Jr. made a rehab start a few days ago for Double-A Corpus Christi, likely going to make his next rehab start. James Click saying on the Astros pregame show over the weekend that likely Wednesday or Thursday he'll make a start for the Sugarland Space Cowboys. They're on the road, so you won't be able to see him in Sugarland, but everything's progressing to Lance McCullers Jr. returning. Michael Brantley, they're saying he hasn't had any setbacks. He's just not progressing as he returns from injury quite as quickly as they had hoped. And then yesterday we saw Yordan Alvarez was held out of the lineup. Dusty Baker saying it's precautionary. He's been dealing with that sore hand. So down the stretch here, and I'm sure the fact that the Stros have that 13-game lead in the division, it allows Dusty and the coaching staff the chance to get the big fella some days off here and there. And as they showed yesterday, they did not need Yordan Alvarez. Jose Altuve homered on the very first pitch of the game, and then Jeremy Pena went back-to-back, and the route was on from there. And oh, by the way, that was against Robbie Ray, the reigning AL Cy Young Award winner and one of the prize offseason acquisitions for Seattle. So things shaping up very nicely for the Stros. You want to be in one of those first two spots in the American League, because the way it's set up now with 3 wild card teams making it, if you are the 1 seed or the 2 seed, then you get an automatic bye straight into the divisional series. You don't have to play that best of 3 series. Again, that does not appear to be any type of issue for the Astros. At minimum, they are guaranteed the 1 or the 2 seed. But as we've been saying for quite some time, the Yankees and the Astros are on a collision course. They're going to meet in the playoffs, in all likelihood, in the ALCS. Home field advantage is going to be critical, especially because we've seen over the last few years, the Stros have the Yankees' number inside of Minute Maid Park. I mean, not only have they been the better team in the postseason for several years now when these two clubs go head-to-head, but especially inside Minute Maid Park, the Bronx Bombers, as many runs as they've scored and as many big bats as they have in their lineup, the Astros do a phenomenal job, and you can't help but think that the atmosphere inside the juice box, especially October baseball, the way it's gotten around here, they close the roof and it just packs everything in. That's going to be a huge advantage. And fortunately for the Stros, I was looking it up earlier. So entering tonight, they have 66 games left in the regular season. Only 23 of those games are against teams with a record above 500. And obviously some of that is teams like the Red Sox and the Orioles are kind of right there at 500. So maybe when the Stros have to play them, that number changes a little bit. But for the most part, the Stros are going to play 2/3 of their games against teams that do not currently have a winning record. And that is a far easier schedule than the Yankees, who are right above them in the standings. So that's why that 1.5 games, it may not be long before we see the Stros overtake the Bronx Bombers, and they have the number 1 record in the American League, which would mean home field throughout the playoffs. We should point out that the Stros, through 96 games so far, are tied for the best record in franchise history. The last time the Stros had this record in their first 96 games was 2017. And we all remember how things ended that particular season. A big reason that things ended the way they did in 2017 was because of the acquisition of Justin Verlander at the trade deadline, a trade deadline that is only a few days away now. August 2nd, 5 o'clock Central Time is when the trade deadline for MLB hits. And the Stros, like so many other teams, are likely going to have to be players at that spot to solidify themselves for a postseason run, and also to possibly hold off some of those other contenders, namely perhaps the Yankees, who are looking to be big buyers at the trade deadline. Before we get into just what Houston may or may not need, what they might do at the deadline, I do want to get one more sound clip in here from Justin Verlander. This was out at Dodger Stadium. He didn't play in the All-Star game, but he still went through all the festivities surrounding the event, and he shed a little light on his future with the Astros, because once he hits 130 innings pitched, there's then a player option he has for the following season in terms of, does he want to opt out and become a free agent? Does he want to exercise that option? You have to think with the year he's having, the type of money we saw thrown around last offseason to the likes of Max Scherzer, that it might behoove a guy like Justin Verlander to, if the going's still good, go out and try to secure yourself another bag. Here's what JV had to say on his future with the Stros.
I mean, of course, it creeps in. I'm human. You never know what the future holds, and you'd like to. But I think one thing that this game has taught me is just like put your head down, work hard, and whatever happens, happens. It's like you can't think about the stuff that you can't think about the what ifs or if nots or whatever. You just do the best you can every 5 days or 6 days, or on occasion 7 or 8 now. And wherever the chips fall, they may. And I think hopefully this is a year that we can win a championship. And if this is the end of my run with Houston, it's just been nothing short of incredible. And the people and the city and the team and my teammates have been a blessing. If it's not the end, then it's also a blessing.
So that certainly sounds like a guy who realizes his time with Houston may be limited. Who knows? But the bigger issue here is windows like this, and I realize down here in Houston, we've kind of gotten used to it, that, there the Stros are in October, making a deep run, going to the ALCS, going to the World Series year in and year out. That is still the exception, not the norm. There are not many opportunities where this comes along, that everything is clicking and you have yourself a legitimate World Series contender. And that's what the Astros have, which is why they need to do whatever needs to be done to give themselves the best chance at another run, not just to the ALCS, not even just to the Fall Classic, but to put another banner up there at Minute Maid Park. And that's why I think with the trade deadline only a week away, that the Stros are going to have to be aggressive and try to fill what holes they do have right now. What is, again, otherwise you're getting very nitpicky here. This is still a very good team and should be the favorites in the American League right now. Now, in no particular order, this is just some of what would be on the Astros wish lists between now and the trade deadline. And not necessarily that they need to get all these things, that this is what they're definitely going to do, but you have to think, especially with the fact that Yordan Alvarez is still dealing with that hand injury, and it looks like it's going to be a lingering thing that isn't going to keep him out of the lineup, and it's not like it's slowing him down. He still remains the hottest hitter in all of baseball, but you want to have some depth there. You want to have another bat, preferably a power bat, and that's where you start thinking perhaps Josh Bell, first baseman for the Washington Nationals. Everybody knows he's on the block. A lot of people are already saying that it's fait accompli that he's going to end up with the Astros, but teams like the Mets have expressed interest. They're going to be looking. There's going to be a whole lot of teams out there looking for a power bat. And so first base is an area that has not been as strong as in years past for the Astros. So is that where they perhaps go after a power bat? They could certainly use another outfielder, because again, Yordan hampered somewhat by that hand injury. Do you really want him out there playing the outfield every day? Michael Brantley still not back in the lineup as of right now. And center field, since George Springer moved on, has been a work in progress. And you've seen a lot of different names and faces go out there and at times look really good and flash some really nice things offensively and defensively. But looking at the lineup, that's certainly an area that the Stros could improve. And at the very least, you want to have some depth there, since you don't exactly know what you're going to get defensively out of Michael Brantley and Yordan Alvarez if you want to be trotting them out there every day in the outfield. Right now, the Stros don't really have a regular quality lefty reliever that they can go to. So that's certainly something that you have to look at. And I got bullpen depth written here. It's really just pitching depth, whatever that may mean. Obviously, when Lance McCullers Jr. does come back, how does that affect the rotation? Does a Jake Odorizzi or a Christian Javier, Jose Urquidy, one of those guys goes into the rotation or goes into the bullpen rather? Once you get to the postseason and you don't need that fifth starter, that can start to help build your bullpen some. But you always are looking this time of year for another arm. And look, Ryan Presley has been fantastic. Set the franchise record yesterday by retiring his 28th consecutive batter. He's been great, especially over the last few weeks. We saw Hector Neris and Rafael Montero do some really nice things right out of the gate because Ryan Presley and his wife just had a baby. So Presley was obviously not with the team for the first 4 games coming out of the All-Star break, but Montero and Neris were able to get the job done. But you've also seen at times guys like Phil Maton not show the same stuff that we saw last year in the postseason. So that is why you can always, if you're a general manager this time of year, try to find some kind of help, some kind of depth for your pitching staff. And don't forget too, as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, you also have to think about trying to prevent some of the other contenders, some of those other teams right there in the mix from possibly acquiring someone. So if the Astros can be players for Luis Castillo, the Cincinnati Reds ace, that would mean that he doesn't end up in the Bronx with the Yankees, who are in desperate need of pitching after losing their setup man, Michael King, to season-ending elbow injury. Luis Severino is on the injured list. Is anybody really afraid of Jordan Montgomery or Nestor Cortez in October? No. So we know the Yankees are going after pitching. So if you're the Astros and there's an opportunity to bring in a quality arm, be it somebody like Castillo or one of the big relievers that's going to be available, getting him not only strengthens your pitching staff, but it could possibly prevent one of your rivals or a fellow contender from getting something that might help them. Before we get out of here, I did want to touch on, we've been kind of keeping track the last few weeks of Alex Bregman and his resurgence, and it continues to be Alex Bregman is back. Over the last 32 games played, you see the power numbers are there, 8 doubles, 6 homers, 21 RBI, hitting nearly 300, getting on base nearly 40% of the time, slugging percentage is there, OPS is there. That is the Alex Bregman who was that was the Alex Bregman who was an MVP candidate in 2018 and 2019 before injuries slowed him down the last couple years. This is the Alex Bregman that everybody is used to. So you don't really have to worry about him. But as we were talking about with perhaps Josh Bell from the Nationals being on the Stros radar, Yuli Gurriel got off to a terrible start to this year as the reigning American League batting champ. Over the last month, he's been playing much better, but that's just because his numbers were so abysmal to start the year. We see last 31 games for Yuli. He's shown some pop, had a big RBI double yesterday, but you see the average, the slash numbers, the OPS, just not what you are used to from Yuli Gurriel. Now, granted, Father Time catches up with everybody. He's still a veteran, a highly, highly respected presence inside that Astros clubhouse. And so he's certainly bringing a lot more to the table than just what has been a down year for him offensively. So he's playing better, which is something that perhaps James Click and staff are weighing in terms of how far do they want to go in trying to acquire a guy like Josh Bell or whatever outfielders may be available. But it is something that they need to look at because, with the catcher spot, even though Martin Maldonado did club his 10th home run of the season over the weekend, he's still hitting below the Mendoza line. That Maldi is out there for his defense, for his ability to call a game, to control this pitching staff, to be perhaps the best in the game in that regard right now. And so how many holes can you afford to have in your lineup as we get closer to October? So just some food for thought, and some of the many things that I'm sure the Astros front office is looking at is, again, the trade deadline, August 2nd, 5 o'clock Central Time. And as we've seen in recent years, the Astros not afraid to go big if the opportunity is there. They still have some quality pieces in their farm system that they can use to try to entice teams out there that are sellers. And so it's going to be a very interesting next week or so as we get closer to the trade deadline, because there's a lot of teams that are going to be doing some shopping, and it's all setting up once again for what we think is Astros Yankees. And as the Astros have already proven, they are not phased at all, one iota, by the New York Yankees. And so if they can only make themselves better, not just getting back the likes of a Lance McCullers Jr., but also adding a piece here or there via trade, it sets them up nicely for the postseason. All right, so that's taking a look at where things stand baseball-wise. We will have the latest from Oakland for you tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. And as I mentioned, Texans training camp opens up this week, so we will get much more into that come Monday, when we'll have actually been out there, gotten to see some of the guys work out, talk to them, see how they're feeling, how things are going. So it's going to start to be a very action-packed few months as we transition slowly, even though it may not feel like it outside, but as summer starts to wane away and we get closer to fall, and that means the start of football and the start of baseball's postseason. As always, if you want the most up-to-the-minute news, updates, scores, anything you want to know in the world of Houston sports, you got to be following our sports director, Mark Berman. You can find him on Twitter, his handle at Mark Berman Fox 26. And again, the latest from the Astros trip out west in Oakland tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. All right, that's going to do it for this installment of the Fox 26 Sports Stream. We will see you again next Monday night, just after 7 o'clock. For all of us here at Fox 26, I'm Sal Manine. Take care. Have a good one.